Hey, Michael Asiffo of the Game Plan is here, and I'm here with a man whose resume is vast. It's a large resume. I feel like we should do one of those TikTok Undertaker Bell memes for him. He is the former bantamweight King of the Cage champion, the former bantam featherweight King of the Cage champion, former lightweight King of the Cage champion, former light welterweight King of the Cage champion, former bantamweight Bellator champion, and a former RIZIN bantamweight champion, Mr. Juan Archuleta. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome, awesome. So obviously, the big main news coming out of all this is that you have now signed to RIZIN. Uh, and your first kind of fight under the RIZIN banner, obviously you fought for them as part of the Bellator RIZIN New Year's event Clash cards, but your first RIZIN card official fight will be against former champion Kleber Koike. How you feeling about that fight? What was kind of the mindset in signing with RIZIN, and um, anything that you're planning on that date?
Yeah, man. I mean, signing with RIZIN when I first got with the organization with the Bellator versus RIZIN, it was just like jaw dropping, just being able to perform in front of an audience like that. The culture, the history that comes with MMA in Japan was obviously one of the best feelings in the world. Being able to walk out and just icons of the sport walking through with you, that have previously walked before you and that were on the card was just, breathtaking. And then to have the performance I had go through and fight Japan's best four guys in the whole world of in the bantamweight division and going 3-1, it's not too shabby, right? Like having to travel across the country and going into their stomping grounds and being able to win the belt, and obviously lost it, but it was bittersweet type feeling, so it was good. Now I'm ready to now I am officially a RIZIN fighter now, signed, sealed, delivered exclusively with RIZIN, with Saka Kibara and all the help that Shingo helped me and kind of just help me understand the history of Japan and the history of what they've done and what they built there is amazing, and I want to be part of it. I want to leave my name in the history books there in Japan where MMA all started from. And so, there are ideas of me coming in and moving up a weight class and fighting at the featherweight division and fighting a former champion is a way to start the bang, right? Is a way to start your announcement and a way to show gratitude of the belief they have in me and how they see me as a fighter, knowing that I could come in and fight anyone in the division. And what better way than fight a former champion? So that puts me right away into title contention, which I'm very excited about. And moving forward, I'm excited to represent that banner.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously, any MMA fan knows about kind of the history of, um, you know, MMA in Japan going all the way back from the Pride days, and in a lot of ways, RIZIN is kind of the spiritual successor to Pride. Um, for the kind of casual MMA fan who's kind of just getting in or starting from a year or so, can you kind of explain more that cultural significance of kind of fighting for RIZIN as an MMA fighter?
Yeah, man. I mean, so with MMA, with mixed martial arts, right? There's a history of wondering what would happen if a boxer fought a wrestler. Like, let's put it together and see what happens. Let's put some fights together, jujitsu versus a striker. Let's put a grappler versus a wrestler. Like, kind of see what's going to happen in that type of fighting aspect. With the rules that they had were very limited, so you put these guys in a ring and you say, okay, what happens? And you find out the winner of who wins these. And this all originates in Japan. The idea of putting mixed martial arts together in one ring and see who's the better man that day. And then not just that, a lot of the jujitsu and the mentality of respect, honor, the warrior code, and things like that come from Japan, right? Like that's where a lot of the art of war comes from, you know, and just so much history books of studying war and using war tactics and being able to use different martial arts as a battlefield, you know, and incorporating it in real life or incorporating it into a competition. You know, you have sumo, you have wrestling, you have all these all these sports there that had just generated very big momentum throughout the world that was just jaw dropping for people to see. And then to see it on a human basis is just outstanding, right? And that's what Japanese were known for, doing the out of the box things, doing it with not just out of the box and saying, okay, good luck, like let's see what happens, but also having the warrior code into it, saying, look, there's a warrior spirit that's among these great fighters, and we're going to showcase that. We're going to show you that they're just not barbarians. They're not guys that are just alcoholics, drug users, and things like that. These guys live by a code. These guys are human beings that we want our kids to look up to because they live by a rule set. And so that's what the Japanese culture brings into fighting. And I don't care who you are, like, you could be John Jones, you could be anyone, Davison Figueredo, you could be Dustin Poirier, all these guys, you know, Patricio Pitbull, AJ McKee, you know, all these guys across the board, even in boxing, right? Like you have Ryan Garcia, you have Tank, all these guys know that Japan is something special when you go and do a combat sport there. Like people want to go to Japan and fight. Like so many of my people here in America are so jealous that I got to sign with RIZIN and that I'm going to be able to perform there. And I'm officially signed under the banner of RIZIN. And it's almost like, you know, they're like, man, I wish I could fight out of my contract and hopefully sign with them one day, you know. And so that's the type of excitement that, and why I'm so excited fighting for RIZIN is because it's not so much the casual fans that I want to get involved. It's the actual fighters that, and that's been my career my whole life, is doing things that fighters wish that they could do, right? And this is something that takes it to the next level. They wish they could compete in front of thousands of fans, 30,000 people in Saitama Arena, 40,000 people in Saitama Arena, where it's dead quiet and you can hear a pin drop, and it's type of a eerie type of feeling when you're performing, because you could hear your coaches so loud, you could hear people clapping, and then dead silence, you know, and you're really having to tune into that inner warrior to go out there and making sure that you're performing to your optimal, because any little mistake could cost you the fight.
Yeah, and you know, I'm glad you kind of mentioned that, because I did want to talk about kind of the different aspects between like RIZIN and, let's say, a Bellator, and how there are differences in you know, the kind of technical aspects of the MMA kind of landscape, but also, you know, the crowd is like a huge thing. You know, if anybody who's watched any kind of event in Japan, whether it be when it's a combat sport, whether it be wrestling or pro wrestling or even MMA, is that they almost treat it like it's golf, right? Like where it's like they let the fighters kind of do a thing, and then when there's something that's impressive, that's when you hear the crowd kind of go wild a little bit. Is there an adjustment period to that between like being able, kind of going from Bellator where the crowd is kind of, I wouldn't say the just bleed crowd. Obviously, there is but it's a different culture, right?
Right.
Is that what's like kind of the positives and drawbacks of that kind of crowd going into RIZIN?
Yeah, I mean, for us, you kind of go back into a training room facility, right? Like where it's dead quiet, you're training with your training partner, you're hearing your coaches speak. So the transition, as far as an athlete wise, I feel for me is a lot more confidence going into the fight, because I'm able to get in my zone faster. I'm able to stay focused on what I'm doing and the mission that's going to be accomplished. Um, the things that are scary when you go into a just bleed crowd and people that want to see the stand and bang and just want to see blood and guts and glory, right? That's a little bit different to adjust to, because now you're fighting and you hear boos, like you got to push the action. You hear screams and you got rocked and everything's still buzzing. It's hard to focus back and not want to get that punch back, right? So with the quietness, it's a little bit easier to keep performing and focus on what the mission is.
Okay. kind of following up on that though, like, so, you know, definitely as a person who's kind of trained a little bit, when you hear somebody coaching the other person and you hear throw the cross, for example, right? When you hear that in the Japanese crowd and it's like your opponent and they're saying like throw the cross or throw something, right? Because you know you can hear their corner, does it always give you kind of pause when you hear with your corner when they give you your advice that you think, hey, maybe the team can hear that as well, or is it because maybe there's a language barrier with like you're facing obviously opponents who more often than not are Japanese or from a different country, because of the language barrier that isn't really a problem for you at this moment?
Yeah, for me, it's not really applicable, right? Because and then for one, two, you have to get really focused on. You have to be used to being able to hear that voice too. You can't like, for instance, I could hear my mom's voice out of anyone in the arena because I grew up with that my whole life, and my wife's voice and my dad's. And I could drown everyone else out, and I can hear my coaches out because I'm just so used to hearing that tone in my ear that it's a simple recognized voice that you're hearing instead of trying to when you're picking and choosing what you're trying to lose to, you're not focusing on the fight and you're probably gonna get knocked out.
Fair point. Okay, so kind of moving on to like the technical aspects. In Bellator, it was kind of, I wouldn't say it wasn't an octagon, but it was a cage, right? So it was a circular cage, right? And in RIZIN, it's a ring that you're mostly fighting out of. Have you kind of noticed any kind of difficulties or advantages kind of going and now fighting in a ring versus fighting with a cage?
Yeah, there are some differences, like different on being able to cut off the ring and being able to hold someone in a corner and holding someone on the fence. Obviously, there's less give on a fence. My second fight in RIZIN, I almost blew my ankle out and then definitely had a high ankle sprain because how bouncy those ropes were and just fell back and almost snapped my ankle, and had to go through the fight with that. The cushion's a lot different inside the ring than the cage. It's not as the thickness of the padding's a lot thinner, so you're slipping a lot more when you're trying to start a combination. So when you're seeing people throw a combination, they're not following through because their feet are basically slipping on the ring, and then in cage it's a lot thicker. You're dealing with the thickness of probably 4 inches between 2 inches. So in the 4 inch thickness of the cushion, you're able to generate more power and more speed because your feet stick into the ground more. And, the ropes are obviously a lot, they're not like a regular rope, like as you see on like tying knots and things like that. They're actually cables. So the cable is like, it hurts, so you got to stay away from that. Some of the cables not protected in some of the corners. So you got to make sure you're not leaving your head outside because you will get cut, as in Ian McCall's fight that he had with I believe it was Horiguchi split his eye. They had to stop the fight, and so there's danger obviously that lurks in the ring that if you're not used to could definitely be a disadvantage.
I see. Okay, so let's kind of switch gears and talk about kind of that event that's going to take place June. Yeah, it would be June. So June 29th,
June
you
9th,
versus
yes.
Cleveland. Sorry, and this is I obviously everywhere you've gone, you've succeeded. Like we just talked about your resume off the top to start here. What what's kind of the early game plan or kind of when it was announced? What do you make of your opponent here?
Yeah, it's an exciting fight, man. A previous champion. He's obviously got a lot of submissions, so the game plan is obviously not to get submitted, and do everything I can in my wrestling ability and grappling ability to stay out of his strong suits. He's obviously gonna try to jump guard. He's gonna try to shoot. He's gonna try to attack the head and things like that. So I'm just gonna have to keep on my footwork and be able to put pressure on him, and find the openings when they come.
I see. Because he is kind of a bit of a, I wouldn't necessarily say a specialist because in MMA nowadays, everyone's well-rounded. Everyone can strike. Everyone can grapple. But I would probably say that you would probably feel like you would have more of the wrestling advantage, and he would be more of the jiu-jitsu guy. So, would you say it? A lot of times when that happens, you typically get a kickboxing match between the two. Do you feel like that's kind of what would take place, or do you think that it's going to be a grappling match through and through?
Well, this is what's exciting that Japan has created, right? You never know. Like maybe it could be a straight up grappling match because this is what fans want to know. They want to know with my style, am I going to be able to nullify his style? And so going into that fight, you never know because again, I could try to go for a takedown, I slip and twist my ankle. He could, bounce off and fall down and get caught with an elbow, and it rocks him, and then he's not wanting to go to the ground because he's dizzy. Fight never know. You never know what happens in a fight. So you just got again. That's why there's no more specialists in just one thing in the lighter divisions because we're all so fast, we're all so athletic, and we're able to adjust on the fly.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. For sure. So let's kind of circle back. Just even before this fight, there's definitely an event happening. I believe even tomorrow, if not tomorrow, like the Monday, when it comes to RIZIN. And there's some pretty good fights on that card. There's more events going on throughout the year. In an ideal world for you, right? Obviously, we don't want you looking past your opponent because, like you mentioned, exciting fight, tough opponent. But in an ideal world for you, looking at your year, ideally, how does a perfect year work out for Juan Archuleta?
Well, they're not just pretty good fights, right? It's the title fight. It's the world championship fight. They're two guys that are at the top of the division that are getting ready to scrap for the title. And that's a title that I want. And a title that where the guy that I fought has beaten the champ, and the guy that that's challenging for the belt has beat that has beat Kleber. So you get a clash of styles again. That's going to find out, like, is the champ going to be able to retain his title and deal with the grappling of the challenger, of the well-roundedness that he brings to a fight. So it's going to be one of the best fights that highlights the night because it's obviously the title fight, and it's a clash of styles. You have a guy that is a knockout artist that knocked out Patricio Pitbull, and that's huge because Patricio Pitbull is considered the 145-pound like top five fighter in the world. So that puts Susaki right up there, with him knocking him out, and while Chichiro knocking him out, and makes his mark as one of the world's best 145ers out there. So it's a great fight, and it's definitely both of those guys are definitely future opponents for myself. Especially I win this next fight and do what I'm capable of going out there and finishing Kleber. And then that puts me in title contention to go and fight the winner coming out of this weekend. And so, yeah, the great fights going on this weekend, and myself seeing in the future and what that's going to set up. Again, me beating Kleber and me having a title fight and then defending the title with whoever that RIZIN's going to present in front of me.
Nice. Yeah. So I would probably say, so obviously you would say after this fight is for you, you're looking at the title. So this is, I would say, is your de facto number one contenders. Winner gets the title shot, championship kind of fight here. For you, right? What's if you could kind of share for any aspiring MMA players, how do you kind of deal with that pressure? Obviously, there's been a lot of success in your career and a lot of high pressure moments. And, right from the jump, you had to face stiff, high caliber competition. So I guess the question is, how do you deal with all of that pressure and the nerves before kind of going out there to kind of take these fights, these exciting number one contendership fights and the title fights as well?
Pressure only comes when you're not prepared or you're not preparing the right way for a fight. People put pressure on themselves for win. I don't care if I win or lose, honestly. I just want to go out there and fight and perform. Like, the rest is going to take care of itself. I know what I need to do. I need to get ready. I need to be as strong, as fast as I can. I need to have as much conditioning as I can because I'm making it a street fight. Like, at the end of the day, we're in there fighting. Like, there is no win or losing when you're fighting. It's hit and don't get hit is all I'm worried about. Work out a submission and don't get submitted and don't get choked out and don't get anything broken. Like, that's what goes through my mind. And so all the other pressure and shit that people think that happens, like, that's on them. That's people that aren't prepared and doing the right necessary things to preparing for a fight. Like, Kleber isn't home right now. He disappeared out of home to go train for this fight because it's scary. Same thing with me. I'm gone. I'm not home right now. Like, we isolate ourselves and go find the best training partners to prepare so that there is no pressure. The pressure is not getting knocked out or not slipping the wrong way and getting kicked. Like, so the pressure of win or losing or thinking ahead only comes when you're not prepared and you have too many things going on your plate at once. Right now, the only thing I care about is performing at my optimal so that I can help build RIZIN and build the company name to make it one of the most elite promotions in the world. Like, I'm going to win the title. I'm going to go out there and do my best. And I am going to promote RIZIN to let them know they do have the best 145er in the world.
Nice, nice. I love that answer. Great answer. So a couple things before we kind of end the interview, obviously, as the time is running out. If I'm a new MMA fan or even just an MMA fan who's kind of not watching a lot of RIZIN or not watching a lot of your career, what would you say is your a typical Juan Archuleta performance for you that you would like, kind of put on like the front of your resume saying like, hey, here, watch this fight. This is what I'm all about. For some of our newer fans of the game plan.
Probably my Patchy mix fight. Like, me and Patchy, we scrapped, right? And it was a full-on MMA fight. Like, he was one of the world's best grapplers and bantamweight in Bellator history. He's 19-1. When I fought him, he had all finishes except one, and he was undefeated. And I went out there and showcased my skills. We went into the best scenario for him, and the worst case scenario that people thought were mine, which was grappling. And I outfought him, and then I brought it back up to my feet, got him out of his game plan and just picked him apart and, showed that I was the best that night. And I am the best, right? Like, I went out there and gave the performance of my life, and it was on my birthday. And that's who Juan Archuleta is, going out there and through adversity, no matter what's gonna come out and be victorious, no matter, not just to win or loss, but just be victorious in general.
Yeah, I think that was a great choice too, by the way, because obviously watching that back, I've watched that fight like I think 5 times already, and I was,
Nice.
Obviously Patchy Mix's name has been out there. There's talks about him, possibly even going to the UFC, and like how does he stack up there? And when you look at the record, the 1-19-1 right now is you. So I think that's a great answer. Now, I guess in terms of the other question, where can I go as a new MMA fan? Let's say I've been touched by the interview. I'm super excited. I want to know what's going on. How do I, as a person living, well, right now I'm based in Toronto, but where can we go to watch your fight?
I believe on the Americas, like you could go on to Triller TV. It used to be Fight TV, FITE TV. But I think they switched the name to Triller TV, where like Jake Paul and all these guys fight on. But that's where I believe in that you could go, or you could go into RIZIN.tv now and on the site or on the app and download that app, and it's very accessible for all fans to tune in. That's probably the best place because obviously it's titled RIZIN. So just go to the RIZIN app or even the website, and there you go. You're clicking in, you're tuned in to Juan Archuleta's fight on Fight Night on June 9th. And not just that, it's going to be a great event too. You got Sergio Pettis and Kyoji Horiguchi fighting on the card as well, where Kyoji was just dismantling Sergio until Sergio just stuck with it and threw his kick and a spinning back fist and knocked him out, and it was a beautiful piece of art that he threw out there that got him out. So is KOG going to be able to have his first rematch win, or for one, his first rematch, and be able to, validate his win that where he was going to be victorious? But we'll see. We'll find out come fight night.
Nice. All Oh, you know what? Let's also help you out a little bit. Where can people find out about you and get your socials?
Yeah, you could JARCH MMA. So it's basically Juan, the first letter of my name, Archuleta, the first ARCH, first four letters, and then MMA because I'm a mixed martial artist. All my platforms are that, and so they can check me out there. And they want to follow the journey and catch some cool stuff. You could subscribe to my YouTube channel and check that out, and check out some behind the scene type stuff. That I try to let in as much as possible.
Awesome. Thanks. I really appreciate the interview. Go ahead, everybody. Go follow this man on all the socials. And thank you for doing this today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me on.